into detailed due diligence. There's confidentiality agreements that are signed, mutual confidentiality agreements, and so you can protect things to a point, but ultimately to get anywhere you need to open up, and if you don't open up, you're not going to get anywhere. And the other way is dealing with reputable people, but there is that risk that someone will take your idea or whatever. And I suppose there's always going to be competition, and there's always going to be that risk. And so the key is you've got a great idea, you've got a great business concept, you can have all the protection in the world, but first to market and getting out there and getting that market leadership position is the best sort of form of protection. But ultimately, in a due diligence process, you have to bare your soul, and you can have your confidentiality agreement in place and everything else. But the deal could fall over, and they can you can require to hand back all the documentation. But there is that risk that your IP.
I guess out of 20 cases, how many times would someone's IP actually leak and someone take it off, for example?
I've never experienced. Well, there's been a few examples, but it's the exception rather than the rule. It doesn't happen very often.
So what are the major risks involved in getting venture capital or even getting grants from the government?
Yeah. Well, as Daniel said, getting the capital's hard enough, but it's really only the start of the process. And I think for early stage companies, I think the statistic is that 80% that do get funding fail.
Okay.
And so it's a high, and the venture capital funds, they'll work on the basis of every 10 deals they do, they'll lose their money completely on 5, they'll break even on 2, they'll make a bit of money on 2, and they'll make a lot of money on 1.
Okay.
So I suppose that's the risk that you.
Block your ears, Daniel.
Don't confuse investor validation with market validation. So because the investors, they're pretty smart, but they're sometimes not the smartest.
Yeah. So Daniel, coming back to you, when actually going for that venture capital, what was actually going through your mind?
I didn't realise how big of a deal it was. It actually required a really, really big mind shift of, one was, we're going to get this money and we're going to be connected at this level with people who have been there and done that and have tons and tons of money behind them.
Yeah.
And that's all fantastic, but then you actually get the money and there's this huge mind shift of, I really need a CFO and the CFO needs a team of people behind them, or I really need 100 staff tomorrow. So the mind shift of not only having the money, but then how to spend it wisely and very, very quickly, that was hard work.
So you didn't think of going to Brazil or anything? Is that where Tony Mockbell went? Greece.
There was a bit of talk of a Learjet when the cash finally arrived in the bank.
Service Central.
The investors made sure they had to sign off.
So what are the next steps now? Because obviously you've got the funding. Did one of the venture capitalists, are they actually on the board?
Yeah, we're putting together a pretty impressive board actually, where we'll end up with 6 or even up to 7 people on the board, which is big.
Fantastic.
One of them is the person that put together the equity deal.
Yep.
And Bruce and my father and I on the board. And then the other 3 are really big strategic players that have been there and done that in this space. Very well known, but can't say.
Oh, come on. It's not been recorded. So what I guess over the next 12 months, is the money to be spent over 12 months, 2 years? When do you expect to see a return, or when do the investors expect to see a return?
It's that first to market gain. It's the best way to protect your IP and your knowledge and your business is actually to be first to market and own the market.
Yeah.
Service Central is very much a marketplace like eBay, where you have buyers and sellers, and having the critical mass of the most buyers and the most sellers is what helps us own the marketplace.
Yep.
Oddly enough, and from the high-end investors that have been there and done that, they're encouraging us to get out there and push this business as fast as possible without too much concern to cash burn.
Okay.
That's more about market penetration and getting... I'm seeing you nod there.
Oh, no, that's pretty common. Yeah, pretty common. They'll probably be looking for the bulk of their return on exit.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Yeah, no, that's all right. So you're doing, to get that market share straight away, you're doing television, radio?
So like the market's really, really deep for us. We're focusing on purely home services at the moment, so helping people find tradespeople, helping people find services for around their home. And we've been focusing on Victoria, where we're on television now on Channel 9, and we're on Fox and 3AW and a few other radio stations.
What kind of response have you had from the campaigns out of interest?
We track it really, really closely, and over the last month we've had our record jobs day with 319 jobs generated a day.
Fantastic.
About $1.7 million worth of work, which we're pretty
excellent. Bit of a round of applause, mate. Come on.
And a record job week, which was 986, which is just so short of 1,000.
Don't you hate that?
Yeah, it killed me. Yeah, well...
Just ring up your friends.
Yeah, I needed a lot done around the home on Sunday afternoon. And the like that.
Can I ask how much you've invested in radio and TV?
Yeah. No.
Yeah, no, be
a lot. Like, sort of a rule of thumb is to actually be present on the radio, like to be heard. You're looking at 20 to 25 grand a month.
Yep.
Per station. And then television's like that much per week.
Yep. So a significant difference.
Yeah.
Do we have any questions for Daniel? Yep.
Just how do you divide the amount of expenditure between radios and television and other medias?
Just if you couldn't hear that, how do you divide the amount of expenditure between radio and TV?
Right.
Yeah, we're a key part of listing a job with Service Central is how you heard about us, and we track that marketing data really, really closely. So at the end of the day, we know how much we've spent and how much we've got from each medium. And effectively for us, it's about how that's travelling. If that's cash flow positive, then it doesn't. We effectively give a carte blanche to our marketing media. But the other thing that it might be particular to Service Central, or it might be relevant to you guys, that we've had to ramp up our advertising incrementally. So if we actually generated a ton of work tomorrow, like 10,000 people called tomorrow, we wouldn't have the capacity to answer all the calls, wouldn't have the capacity to do all the jobs. So using print media and then radio and then television has allowed us to incrementally grow in that regard.
Okay, fantastic. Matt, tell us more. What, for the companies seeking grants or venture capital, where's the first port of call? Because obviously it's an absolute minefield out there.
Is this my little chance to give my...
Yeah, go for it.
Well, I mean, the first cab off the rank, I'd say it'd be BSI.
BSI.com.au.
But apart from that, I mean, there's Oz Industry, there's a range of websites, there's Oz Industry websites, there's Calling Oz Industry. So there's quite a bit of information there on the internet, but there is a whole range of programs out there, and so you want to be talking to someone who does that for a living. So
yeah.
That's
is it recommended that we get someone else to do it for us?
Well, you think about it, you're an early stage entrepreneur, you're trying to commercialise a new business, you've got a million things to try and do, and do you want to worry about your R&D tax offset? I don't know. Like,
hell no.
I don't know. I mean, really, we do see a lot of companies who they want to do it all themselves, they don't want to pay any consulting fees, that's great. But, the opportunity cost and time, the cost of their time, the opportunity cost of, taking their eye off the ball of their business, could be a lot more than the consulting fees that you need to pay someone.
So the risk is in fact higher.
Yeah, and,
to some
and
degree.
the other risk with the grants is that if you don't do it properly, then you can get audited and you can. Well, I'm not sure you can go to jail, but you
Okay,
can,
so we've got to track where we've spent the money for the government
that's right.
grants.
So you need. So we basically prepare our clients to be audited, basically.
Okay.
Well, so that they're ready for an audit if that comes about.
Fantastic. We'll take one last question, then we'll wrap it up. Ron.
Just to take a new product to market by an entrepreneur generally involves a huge amount of innovation, a huge amount of risk taking. And the moment they take on venture capital of whatever form, that imposes a high level of governance, which tends to suppress the very essence of what took that business to the point of where it's worthy investing in. How do you reconcile those two extremes?
It's interesting. The governance in some ways is actually beneficial. you get an entrepreneur with no processes around them, and these venture capital funds, this is all they do, invest in early stage technology, and some of them not so much in Australia, but certainly overseas. They're most of the VCs are serial entrepreneurs in their own right anyway. So the governance can be a constraint, but in a lot of cases these entrepreneurs need some sort of structure. They need to be able to go off and do whatever they're best at and leave the rest of the stuff for others. And I mean that's a common downfall that someone can be really smart and have a great technology, but they can be terrible commercially. They can have terrible people skills, and it's usually those things that that's the reason they never get anywhere. So, I mean, there's more pluses than minuses.
So, what are your top 3 tips for accessing venture capital and government grants?
Have a great product, a great technology. I suppose that'd be the first one. Really know your market. Know your market really, really well, and be willing to. And I suppose the other one, which is sort of a little bit, is really know your strengths and weaknesses, and be prepared to be very open and upfront about those.
So be prepared to let go of control.
Yeah, and if there's something that you're not good at, be very open and upfront, and be willing to bring on help.
Yep, fantastic. Daniel.
Top 3 tips?
Yep, top 3 tips.
That was a pretty good start. You really need to have a good team around you, someone that can actually run the business whilst you're going through the due diligence and all of that. And I'll just limit it to 2. But the second one is pretty important, that business is all about selling. Yet this is the one sale that will be bigger than any other sale that you'll do in your entire life. So it's about picking your targets, knowing your market really, really well, and in this case your market is really, really rich people.
Hang out down Toorak.
Exactly. And spend some time really learning how to sell to that particular market, because it was ironic. When the deal finally came through, our sales team were ecstatic because they'd had this huge week and they'd generated $60,000 in sales. And Bruce and I had sort of walked into the office and gone, well, we've only got one sale, but it's worth a few $1 million.
Yeah. So last question. Tip 3 first, and the last question.
I've got no idea.
You've got no idea. Okay. How did you celebrate?
We got all of the staff. We hired out a bar.
Yep.
We got all of the staff together. So VCs, we didn't do this with company money at all. Sure.
That was in the budget, wasn't it?
But we hired out a bar. We got all of the staff together, and we got all of our strategic partners together, and we partied through the night. At the end of the night, there was still about 10 or 14 of us left. and there was a few $100s left on the bar tab, so we bumped it up from beer and spirits to beer and wine to spirits, and we still couldn't do it. So we lined up the bar with Jaeger bombs, and so yeah, we had a big night.
Absolutely. Got plastered, I take it. Fantastic. Can we have a big round of applause for Matt and Daniel? Thanks for coming along, guys. Thank you. And of course, the good old Hague's chocolates. Yeah, you gotta love chocolates. Big round of applause. If you've got any questions, can they come up and ask you? Yep, definitely. And also come up and have a chat to Daniel as well. Beautiful. We'll start rounding up the night now. How'd we find that? Some useful information? Fantastic. And we're kind of discussing whether you're after a grant or not, there are particular things that you need to be doing in your business anyway. So, I mean, the due diligence, the processes, really working out where's your place in the market. So having a strong, I guess, niche market and really focusing on that. So that's something that you can definitely take away.